Shoot, hold on. How do I change
What?
that?
Well, welcome everybody. This is Heart to Heart. My name is Elmira. This is where we discuss stories of breakthrough with world leaders and changers. Today we have a special guest, Child Jones. She is magnificent. She is a world traveler, lifestyle curator, author, so many different things I can tell you. The title of her most recent book is Soft Landing, A Return to Self. There is the book. You all can see it right there. Okay, let's start off because this conversation will be about just that.
Okay.
Creating a soft landing and returning to yourself, because I know that's why you wrote the book. So, offhand, what does soft landing mean for you?
So for me, it's well, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy that you allowed me to be your guest and that you created space for me today. So, soft landing simply just means that you are able to land in a place where you're comfortable, you are available, like all the things line up. Um, so often, especially today, we live in a very turbulent time where so many things are changing. And when I think about a plane, when you're on the plane and you land, especially if you just came out of turbulence and it was a little rocky ride and you land, you want to make sure that those wheels hit the ground and they don't hit them where it's jarring you and everything is all, moving around. You want that landing to be as smooth as possible, right? You want it to be in a place where, you know, all the luggage is not flying everywhere and
No, we don't need that.
the people are jarring. You want it to be soft, right? You want the landing to be smooth. And so the same thing in life. Um, Anytime you're going through a transition, you don't want to be an upheaval. You want it to be a smooth ride. And so soft landing to me simply means that I'm arriving on time. Everything is going according to plan as it should or could,
Mhm.
and that everything is in place and that I'm not discombobulated in any way, shape, or form. That just things are smooth. Not that they won't have challenges, but that for the most part, it's smooth.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that because there's been many times that I've traveled and it won't smooth. I can say, well, I've only, like, I live in Atlanta now, and but I've only flown out of the Atlanta airport once. I've gone through it like a connector flight, but that time was smooth. It was a soft landing. Like, it wasn't too much craziness. Yeah, I had to get on the tram and stuff, but it's correct. We want our life to be smooth. We want it to have some measure of safety. So my question is, because it can seem like some of that is out of our control, just like the analogy with the plane. I can't control the pilot. I can't control the weather. I can't control whether Delta or JetBlue or whoever, whatever airlines across the world had a transfer that day and they issues, what, any of that. How do we stand up against the outside things
Hmm.
that may be preventing it from being smooth?
Absolutely. So you always are in control of you. You're always in control of your response, your reaction to certain things. And so, even if the things are not going well, even if you arriving late, you might miss your connection, whatever the situation is, you can take that and say, you know what, that might be preventing me from being on the wrong flight, right? That might be preventing me from being in an accident or meeting the wrong people, or, just some other things that could be worse than the current situation that I'm in. So I'm just going to take this as, you know what, I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and that the universe is protecting me from something else, and that maybe I just needed a little extra time. Or
Hmm.
maybe I'm in this airport and, you know what, I meet the love of my life because I just happen to
Uh-oh.
be sitting in the right seat, right? Um, Anything can happen, and it's just how we react. And so anytime in life, even because I've moved and it wasn't the greatest situation, wasn't, all smooth situation. I just literally left Malaysia a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and everything, I got to the airport 3 hours, no, 4 hours in advance, because I needed the buffer time. I needed to handle, I had 6 pieces, I actually had 8 pieces of luggage, just all kinds of different things. But I, even though I had all that time, I was just arriving to the gate 30 minutes before I had to leave because of some
What?
stuff that happened at the counter, at the ticket counter, that took almost 2 hours to handle. And so I could have looked at that like, oh, this is just it. I just, I, I took some deep breaths. I was agitated, but I knew that I was like, you know what, I'm claiming a smoother ride because everything else is going to happen like it's, according to plan. And it did. You know, I arrived in Qatar on time. Everything else kind of lined up. But it's really about your perspective. It's really about your attitude and how you perceive things. Because even in turbulence, you can act like you crazy in the air. What's that gonna do? It's not gonna do anything because the turbulence is out of the pilot's control. It's out of the plane's control, and you just have to kind of adjust. And it doesn't feel good, but you're still okay. And I think that's what you have to understand as you're traveling. To get to your next destination, or if the landing isn't as soft as you would like it to be.
Hmm. Oh, hey, androgyny. So, okay, if the landing isn't so, because you said there was some stuff. You just left Malaysia. There was some stuff. How much of your life did you put into this book? Because I know this. Yeah, I just want to know. Like,
Um, I'm gonna plead the. No, I'm just kidding. So somebody called me. They read the book and they said, "Really? Did you? I hope you sign has people sign some agreements." And I said, "This life, if this is a fictional story, it is not about me. I don't know what you're talking about."
yeah,
Because
it's fiction.
but there are some things that are parallel to my life. I obviously wrote the book, and I used certain situations, but I changed everything about whatever the situation may have been. I changed names, I changed people, I changed situations, and so it's loosely based on my experience, especially moving from DC, because the book it starts in DC, where the main character Natalia Tally, who is going through a divorce, and she's leaving with her daughter to move to Tulum, Mexico. That's not her choice,
Mm-hmm.
but based off of the fact that her husband wants to fight her, she chooses that's the closest location he would agree to. And so she goes there and she creates a life for herself, and she's starting over, right? And so as one would do, you start over. But I also left DC, moved to Mexico, not to Tulum. And I didn't have a daughter, I had a son. But that's pretty much the similarities, is that the character is similar in the experience of leaving a relationship and going somewhere else to restart their life. Um, but yeah, I threw in some pieces up my
Yeah, because that's what the artists do. The artists take from. I was actually listening to this guy El Mean. Have you heard of him? The artist.
No.
You might. I think you will like him. He's from the UK, but he's based in Sudan. Like his
Okay.
roots are in Sudan, but the only reason I got hip to him was a BET Awards the other night. But one
Mhm.
of the things he mentioned was because he makes songs about love and all of that. He said, I've never actually been in a relationship. I just observe. He said, I
Mm.
observe what people go through, just like you, even though you took bits and pieces from your story, you observed what people do when they struggle with returning to themselves. So that's my next question. Why do you think so many of us struggle with that, like being our authentic self and operating in that? Because you could have easily said, I'm not going to move to Mexico. I'm not going to move to Malaysia. I'm not going to move from Malaysia. You could have just said, I'm here for life, no changes, no nothing, whatever I wish to explore. And I know you've been growing your YouTube channel, you've been doing like all kinds of amazing stuff. Why do some people struggle with returning to their self, returning to their passions, any of that?
So I think this is my based on my personal opinion. I think that a lot of times people struggle with getting because so we come into the world knowing who we are, and I think we go through the channel of forgetting, and it's our job as we grow and develop to return back to what we knew and the contract that we had as we came into the world, what we were supposed to do, our passions, our purpose, and how we're just supposed to show up. And that is part of what is authentic. What's authentic is we know what we're supposed to do. We tend to try to either deny it because of the experiences uh, that we've gone through, or the things that we have been taught in life. And so we try to negate, some of us try to negate
Mm-hmm.
being connected to what our roots are. We know the seed, I was saying this last night to someone, a seed, an apple seed, that apple seed already knows it's an apple. And it just has to be planted in the right place for it to grow, develop, and become the tree that produces the apple, right? And so you know that a lot of times people don't want to return back to themselves. They don't want to awaken or answer the call, is because it requires them to do some work. It's not easy. It's not just I just arrived. No. That return is not always easy. That return is just like that flight. It can be a little bumpy. It can have some turbulence. The flight attendant might have an attitude. There's all the
Mm.
things that could go wrong, right? Your life, as you look at yourself and you decide, you're making decisions about where you're going, what you're doing, who you're going to have along the ride. You have to ask yourself some questions, and you have to be ah somebody open the
Your
door.
your lady, she trying to get you to ask some
You're like, listen, uh, only me, but yeah, and returning to yourself, it requires one to ask the hard questions. It requires you to sit with yourself and be aware that I don't want what I used to have anymore. When I got on the plane to go to Mexico originally, back 4 or 5 years ago, I knew I didn't want the status quo. I didn't
Mm.
know what was on the other side, and I had been there and traveled and saw and speculated where I was going. However, I didn't know who I was going to encounter. I didn't know what issues might have arrived when I got there. I didn't know any of that. I just knew that what I had in front of me didn't sit well with me anymore. I didn't want to do that. I wasn't participating in that. And so for me to get clear about what I did want, I had to ask myself some questions. And I had to be clear about what I didn't want so that we wouldn't go down that road again. But what do I really want? Who am I? Where am I going? What do I want in my life that reflects who I am and who I'm growing to become? And so a lot of times people don't want to do that work because that work is difficult. And that work requires them to take action. And you can't
Mm.
return back to anything until you actually take the action to start moving in that way, in that direction. If you're not willing to do that, you're going to stay where you currently are. And oftentimes that does not, that's complacency, and people are comfortable, and you have to be uncomfortable to get to comfort. And so that's what people aren't willing to
Yeah, because it is uncomfortable.
do.
Because I mean, I can tell you too, like I've made some, now I haven't lived overseas like you, but I've moved like multiple times for that reason. Because when I did my first move from Virginia to Nashville, that's where we met in
Hmm.
Nashville. So, like, I knew, I said the same thing as you. I don't want this specific life. There's got to be something ahead for me. And I was like, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna be by myself. I was by myself. I didn't know nobody in Nashville. And it was what it was. And I knew the uncomfortability. I didn't know all of that uncomfortability was ahead of me. But I was up for it because I wanted what was on the other side. And I think that's what's important too, understanding your desire. And I know this is what you do as well because you're a soul alignment coach. How do you truly get in alignment? Because some of that comes with the uncomfortability. And when we hear that word alignment, it often seems like, oh, it's just going to be easy and just get in flow. And I'm just going to be there. But how does this process of really getting in alignment with your soul's true calling look like when you help your clients do it?
So often it just requires them to get still enough to hear you. We know, like we have a knowing, and this is not working.
She don't want to be up there. She
Right.
said,
We're like, I know this. I don't want this. Okay. But Lord, but we have a knowing. We have an understanding. And what happens is, when you're unaligned, you have some discomfort, some things that are coming to you trying to get your attention, to have you adjust some things. And what happens is if you don't answer that call, it's like, have you heard the story about the dog that's sitting on the porch on the nail, and he's hollering and he's hollering, and the owner sitting on the rocking chair, he's just rocking, and somebody walks by and goes, "What's wrong with the dog?" And he said, "Oh, he's sitting on the nail." He said, "Well, why he don't get up?" He said, "Don't hurt bad enough." And so
mm,
until some of the things that are unaligned are adjusted, what you can get comfortable sitting on that nail. Eventually, sitting on that nail is going to be comfortable for you, because after the initial pain goes away, you start getting comfortable with the pain. And a lot of people are living in pain, but they're living comfortably in pain. And so what I do is help them say, okay, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to awaken to the fact that there is still some pain here, and that I want to actually bring attention to that issue and make the adjustment. And just like you go to a chiropractor and you have some tension and they realign you and you straighten up, that may happen and last a week, and you need to get a readjustment, and then you keep readjusting to the point where you get some alignment. Same thing happens in your life, especially with your soul. When you're ready to answer the call that your soul is calling you forth to actually answer, you have to start asking those hard questions. You have to sit with your truth. You have to be quiet enough to actually be like, you know what, I had that come to me when I was 3 years old. You know, I had that experience because you've been told what you're here for. You may have negated it. Sometimes our family is a big issue in that, and they're trying to redirect you because they want you to be a certain thing or do a certain thing, and you follow suit. And that
Hmm.
may be totally incongruent with who you really are. But until you get agitated enough to be like, I went through a whole, situation where I just became a whole entire lawyer. I spent years and hours of practicing and, doing all this work. And then you wake up and you like, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel
Mm.
like this is where I'm supposed to be, because you just followed your mama because they wanted you to do this, or they wanted you to show up in a certain way. They wanted our legacy to be this, but that's not who you, not to say that you can't do that, but it's not in total alignment with who you are and how you're supposed to show up. You may be able to take some of those skills and abilities and that talent and use it for what you're supposed to be doing. But it does require that you awaken to that, and you have to get agitated enough to say, this is not working for me. And sometimes that may mean that your finances start to go left. Sometimes that means that the people around you start acting in a certain way, and you like, what, I just can't take this anymore. Not that you don't love them, not that you don't want them in your life, but they may not be able to be in your life in the way in which they have always been, because now you're taking a shift. And again, like we talked about earlier, that shift, that realignment may mean that it takes you to a place where you're not showing up in the same way, and the people who have expected you to show up in the same way are now like, wait a minute, you changing. I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm developing, and you can either do that with me or I can do that over here. And so that is very difficult. And so people they don't like aligning because it requires them to make very hard decisions, say goodbye to people, move on. And again, every goodbye is not because I don't like you. It just means that I am a different person, and what we used to do don't align with where I am and where I'm going. And so you have to make those decisions, I think.
Yeah, those decisions can be hard because it comes with feeling like you've lost family, lost friends, lost a job, or old identity. But really, what you're doing is returning to yourself. And something you said was key. Like you knew it. You knew it when you was 3 years old. You knew what you was told. So why are we sitting here struggling with the alignment of that? And yeah, it's gonna require some hard decisions.
Absolutely. And if it was easy, everybody be doing it. And everybody's not. Because it requires you to work. And people have gotten so complacent with not working, not doing the work, not asking themselves the hard questions, and not trying to identify, because we have so many things that interfere with that. You got the TV, you got social media, you got people's thoughts and intentions about who you are, what you're supposed to be doing. You got your family, you got your friends, you have all these different things that are coming to vie for your attention. And you get caught up in that, and you don't say, hold up, who am I? And that requires get still enough to ask those questions, and turn off the lights and sit with yourself in the darkness so that you can reappear as the person that you're supposed to be. But you have so many things that's trying to get your attention, but well, actually, you trying to get your own attention too, but you're not answering it.
Yeah, that's wild because you got to get your own attention, but it is. You do have to go in the dark. And it's something the light is discovered in the darkness because without darkness, we can't have light.
No
And
light.
sometimes we don't want to sit in that room. I know when I first started doing some meditation, it was challenging because it meant I had to observe my thoughts, like each and every one of them. It wasn't And then I learned, okay, I don't need to like try to cancel out these thoughts. I'm just observing to see what's going on, what's happening, how is it affecting me, like those types of
Right.
things. Because when you start, it is challenging because you have to be comfortable with yourself, what you're actually speaking. And I'm always talking about the body. Like, what is your body saying to you? Because your body could be giving you these signals that you're out of alignment. So that's leading me to another question. How
Okay.
did what was one of the ways you knew that you didn't want to stay in DC? Like, how did you know? Like, were there any physical symptoms, anything? Because you discussed all of that, like how we're
Mhm.
getting the signs, the signals, inner voice, whatever. How did you know?
Well, I was in a relationship. I had just had my son, so he was actually about 18 months when I made the decision. And the relationship was not congruent. I loved the person. I believed the person loved me. But just because someone loves you, they can only love you to the degree in which they understand love, right? And it doesn't mean that they don't love you because they don't show you the love that you want or that you're willing to receive. It just means that that's as much as they could give. And so I knew that the person loved me, like wholeheartedly, would do anything for me. But I wasn't going to be able to grow to the next level with this individual unless they were willing to do the work, and they weren't willing to do
Mhm.
the work. And so I thought if I left and I gave enough time and space, because I knew if I went to the next state, it wasn't gonna happen. But I was like, if I go to this country and you understand I'm serious and that I'm gonna continue to do my work, you go get yourself right. And because the issues that we had were not jarring issues that you couldn't move beyond. It just was level and positioning issues where I was ascending to the next level so that I could do the work I needed to do. And so I could be in the place that I could show up for my clients. And I had to ask myself all the hard questions. And he just was like, I'm gonna get drunk. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? That's not, that ain't gonna work. I can't do it. And so I love the person, but I just had to make some very difficult decisions. And, people came at me because they thought I was wrong for moving his child, who happened to be a little black boy, to a whole nother country without his father, breaking up a home, doing all. So people came at me with all kinds of different things. And and I even question myself, like, are you doing it? Is this your ego? Are you doing this for you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, are are you doing? And yes, yes, I'm doing this for me. But I had to get to that place where yes, absolutely, I am
Yeah,
putting
like
my faith
emphatically, yes.
I am saving me because I can't save this child. I can't save nobody else if I don't save me. And right now, I know I'm not in the right place. I'm not planted in the right soil for me to be able to grow. And so I'm gonna have to make some very hard decisions. And I did. And there were many days that I fought myself. Should you go back? should you should you do this, should you do that? And it wasn't easy, and it wasn't just like, I just appeared in Mexico. I appeared in Mexico and had to like reevaluate every who are you, what do you really want, what happened in the relationship that didn't sit well with you. And I'm the type of person who, if I'm in a I don't, but when I leave you, I don't believe in circling back. I don't think because I'm going to do everything I possibly can so that when this is over, I'm good. I don't have no regrets. I may hurt a little, but I did what I did. I said what I said, and I'm good. And I stand on that 10 toes
Mm-hmm.
down. And so I knew that I was given time and space for this individual because I can't change you, but you can decide you want to change. And I gave you space to make those decisions. But at the same time, I also was making the decision that if you didn't choose to change, I was okay with that. And I was going to be okay with the fact that I needed to move on and I can love you from a distance. And so I did. And they didn't change as much as I wanted them to change, as much as I was sending good love and light and like they got it, they gonna get it. It didn't happen. And it was difficult and it was a lot of internal warring with myself. A lot of people coming at me with really you selfish and that's a little black boy and you are a woman, how you gonna raise him to be a man and
Oh
anything
my
that you could
goodness.
possibly say. And I had to stand in my truth and know that first of all this is not even solely about me, but I'm giving my child a better viewpoint of his dad,
Hmm.
and I'm also
Yeah.
giving him a very vantage point in the world. And so I was okay with that.
Yeah, you had to be even after that constant battle, because I'm sure that battle probably went on, would you say, for months, for years with yourself? I mean,
The battle with myself didn't go on for long because
yeah.
I was doing the work. I was, crying. I was, questioning. I was journaling. I was meditating.
Hmm.
Um, but the battle outside, whatever's going on inside mirrors what's going outside or vice versa. And so I was fighting him also until one day I said, you know what? This ain't my fight because I don't have to fight you because I'm right. Number one, I'm okay with everything I've done and not even right or wrong, but just I am at peace with the decisions I've made. And I did it from a place of love, not to hurt you, not to inflict pain upon anybody, not to get you back, not to be like, oh, I'm gonna put you on this, that, or that. Not, I didn't, none of that was my disposition. My disposition was I am responsible for the work that I came here to do in my life and you or nobody else can interfere with that. Because at the end of the day, when I take my last breath, I'm going to be asked, were you, did you do what you were supposed to do? And I need
True.
to hear, well done. I don't, you missed that because you chose not to answer the call on that. No, we don't have those conversations because I came here to do the work and I'm going to be responsible for doing it. And sometimes the people you love the most are trying to be a barricade for that work. And you have to ask yourself, is it, am I going to succumb to the fact that they don't want me to show up? Because how is that love? How is it love if you come to me, you say you love me, but you don't allow me to be me? You don't,
Mm.
you're trying to infiltrate the work I'm supposed to do because you're jealous or you're not well with yourself and you're not doing the work you're supposed to do. And so I'm clear about this is bigger than me and my ego and what I feel like is comfortable for me because it's comfortable to a certain degree, but there were certain things that had become um, adjutants that was making me be like, I don't want to do this because I'm not happy here anymore, and I don't want to not be happy. I don't want my child to see me unhappy, and I don't want to make your life miserable because I'm unhappy because that's what happy people who are not happy do. They make your life miserable. So I was like, I'm
Yeah, it's like
almost
a
straight.
spiral, and you end up being like that bad apple, rotten apple, and then you infecting everybody else because you unhappy. It's
And I
like
wasn't gonna do that.
what are we doing here? How do you because something just came to mind. Do you think that those individuals who have not returned to themselves are the most critical of somebody else returning to themselves, or is it the opposite, or is it a myriad of things?
Uh, I think when anybody doesn't answer their own call, that at some point when they see you, when you can think about it like this, you had that cousin or friend or sister who y'all was so close. And then when you started to grow and start doing things, then they start acting a little funny, right? And you like, what? Or you got that good job, right? Your first good job. And you're like, yeah, and I'm making X, Y, Z, and I'm doing whatever.
And
And
you done
you
bought your
happy.
house, you got the nice clothes, you doing all this.
Yeah. And they stayed complacent. They didn't go to school. They didn't do this. And not to say that they had to, right? But they're not answering their call because you see the talent and skills and abilities in them. And you've even tried to be like, listen, let me help you out. Let me do this. Nah, I don't want to do that. And they stay there. At some point, you have to keep going, right? And it doesn't mean I'm better than. It's mean I've made different decisions. And these decisions have yielded these different results. And so at some point, you do see the tension because unless they get close to themselves and say, you know what, I admire that person, I respect what they're doing. And, even if they don't want to say, you know what, you inspired me, right? Because sometimes they don't, but yet, if your inspiration has inspired them to make certain moves and they get really decisive about what they want in their life, and then you start seeing them grow, oftentimes you end up having to leave those people and y'all, they become distant friends or distant relatives that you like, oh, I see you at a family reunion every so many years, and you're like, hey, how you doing? And they still doing the same thing. They still flipping burgers at Wendy's or whatever. And your heart well, I know my heart goes out because I'm like, especially if we blood, like we came from the same thing. And I saw you doing these great things. I tried to help you, yet you didn't want to do the work. And so I think they do make it difficult sometimes, if they're in close proximity. But if they're not, and they just kind of just fall to the wayside, it's it's challenging if you had any kind of love and respect for that person or those people. It's difficult sometimes for you,
Yeah.
who is a waymaker, trying to follow the call. It's difficult when you see that, because a lot of times, like, I know there are choices I made that I had to leave people that I didn't want to leave. And I saw potential and I saw how we could do it together. And I didn't want to do it's lonely at the top when you're doing stuff all by yourself. You want to bring people on, but then bringing people on can become burdensome. And you like, oh no, I'm not carrying people, right? Because you can't. And that's why I started thinking about I had therapy. I went to a therapist one time and she told me, listen, just like there's crabs in the bucket, and
Mm.
you are the crab that got out. You the crab that was. She's like, but the problem was because at this time I was the crab trying to reach back in, right? And then I had people
Mm.
pulling me back and stepping on me and keeping it moving, and I was trying to climb and still climb and carry, and I was like, it's exhausting. She said, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have to, if you want to help in any way, shape, or form, get out the bucket, throw a rope. That's all you're responsible for. So it was like, but you can't try to pull them. You can't try to carry them. She said, because they just want to get out. They not worried about who they use, misuse, abuse, none of that. And your kind spirit is like, I want to help you. She's like, but your help has to be from a foundational point where you can throw them their lifeline. You can't
Mm.
be their lifeline. And so that changed the whole perspective of how I was helping people.
Yeah, because I can agree. I did massage therapy for years. Now I'm helping people with their breakups and stuff like that. And you just want to help. You like, I see your potential. I see what you can be. but you gotta help them. They gotta help themselves. I even witnessed it with I tutor some massage students now, helping them with their national exam. I see it with them because, and I even explicitly tell them, I'm not going to be there when you go to that testing site. So you got to learn this stuff. You got to know what the cerebellum is and what the heart do and what this muscle is and all the muscles, because I can't spoon feed you. You have to help yourself. And to me, that's a major part of returning to yourself, is understanding your own power. It's like, because
Mhm.
if you don't understand what gifts, talents, abilities you have, how are you gonna show that to the world? Because
Right.
it's not possible.
It's not. And so many people try. They try to, you cannot give from an empty cup. If you don't have an overflow, you can't give, because then you're giving from depletion, and that's not giving. I even had a meditation last week where I realized some of the blockages that I had was because I wanted to give, I didn't want to give from obligation. And so I just was like, I don't want to give because I felt like if I'm obligated to give, I'm obligated to show up, I'm obligated to do all these things for all these different people, that doesn't feel good. And giving from obligation doesn't feel good. And
Hmm.
so I had to really come to terms, like, where is this blockage coming from? And it was the fact that I was the oldest daughter. Everybody wanted me to do everything. I had to be all things to all people. And then when I became successful, then everybody had their hand out.
Hmm.
Now, if I have my hand out right now, ain't nobody got. What you? Oh, nah, you the
What you
one,
looking
right?
for?
Who you? You know. And so, it's interesting that the ebbs and flows that you go through in life, and the things that we've accepted and the things that we even encountered, and how they affect us. And so, like, when I was going through the meditation and I was like, I'm trying to get to the root of this problem, and I realized, because it's then when you said, you know what, I'm gonna take care of these people. It was from the point of not wanting to be to have the obligation. I wanted to be able to give freely from my heart, but yeah, I had all these people who needed something. And so
Hmm.
then it started creating a blockage in how I showed up. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a whole myriad of different things that will take you on the road to returning to yourself and really asking yourself, who are you? What do you want? How do you want to show up? What is important to you? And the one thing that I really appreciate about the main character in this book is that she had community. She had sister friends that really supported her in knowing who she was and helping her get back to who she should be and how she should show up. And a lot of times you may not have that. I mean, at least for me, I didn't have that. That part I had to write into. I had to write into the book because I didn't, I've had sister friends, but not to the level of that. And I've had one or two friends who rode with me till the wheels fell off. But the one thing that I've always sought was the community that could help me return to myself, because they have returned to themselves or they're
Hmm.
returning to themselves. And so that's the other part of aligning. I feel like it's imperative that you align with the right community of people who can support you through your return, because that's also important as well.
At this point, do you think you found such a community, whether it's something you developed yourself or?
I so while I was in Malaysia, I was like, okay, I love it here, but I don't have no community. I don't have no community. So I started my own community, and people started coming. People started showing, oh, I live here. I live here, and then I developed a community to help me be in Malaysia. Um, but then as I was transitioning out, um, the one thing, because I left Mexico and I had a great community. I had all the people. I had the housekeeper, I had the nanny, I had all the friends and the caregivers and all that. Um, and so as I have elevated in my thought process, the things I want to do, how I want to live, where I want to live, what I want my life to look like, that shifts. And you then have to like find people who are congruent with that. And so as I see on my journey, there are people showing, I think of life as like the yellow brick road. Like it's like God's, and those people are start showing up, and that person need a heart, that person need a brain, that person, or whatever, and whatever. What are you searching for? And these people will come for you, and they will show up, and you gotta just ask universe, like I need this right now. And I have found that as I have continued to move, some people will fall off because they don't want to do the work, or their work is no longer aligned, and
True.
the new people will show up, and they've been showing up. And I think that's also another reason why people don't do the work, because they feel like, well, I'll be by myself. No, you won't. You weren't meant to be by yourself. You'll have the people that need to show up for you to do the work that you need to do. This is not solo work. This
Yeah.
is soul work. So you
Ooh,
got,
I like that. This ain't solo work. This is soul work.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you got to call those people forward. I need help right now. Send out your little back call, and they'll start showing up.
Yeah, because you can call them in. You can literally call them in. Because one thing I've discovered, you've actually traveled and lived internationally. I would say that my community is international. Like I got a friend in the UK. I got people all over the world, and I never met them a day in my life. But the beauty of the internet is I can utilize that to help me, because I did, like, as part of my return to self, I did Queen of Fu, a Sacred Woman. And so I
Mm,
have that group of ladies too that we meet once a month or twice a month if I decide to do that. So it's opportunities for us to call that into our life.
absolutely.
It really is. Well, there's one final question I always ask everybody. And so I'm going to ask you, what would you say is your greatest breakthrough when it comes to returning to self?
Mm, I'm gonna have to sit with that one. What's my
Yeah.
greatest breakthrough? Um, Realizing that I am only responsible for me. And that one was hard because I'm a nurturer. I came into this world helping everybody else. And so it was very difficult for me to say no and to set boundaries and to be like, no, I can't. Because
Hmm.
I always went into like, well, what are they gonna think, or am I being selfish? And I had to understand that breakthrough was, it's okay to be selfish. You're responsible for self first. Self, self. That the key word is self. And so selfish is not bad. We've been taught that it's a bad word. Selfish is not a bad word. um and I had to really understand that for me to have a breakthrough, I had to be responsible for myself. I had to put me first. I had to set boundaries and tell you no and say that I can't, I'm not showing up for that, or it's not in my best interest to do those things, because that is in total disagreement with what I'm trying to do in my life. And it doesn't mean that I don't like you. Doesn't mean that I don't want to be with you. Doesn't mean that
Hmm.
I, you know, uh, we not family. Um, but I'm not doing dysfunction. And if you keep bringing me dysfunction, I'm going to have to say no. But the breakthrough really was about me honoring who I am, what I came here to do, and to be very clear about that. And so now I can stand 10 toes down and be like that. And it doesn't, okay, I really don't care about you because those are your thoughts and you can sit with them. And when you done sitting with them and you figure all that out and you tired of being mad, then you can have a conversation with me. But until then, I said what I said, and I don't feel any kind of way. Um, does it hurt sometimes to be like, I wish I could, or you know, I, especially when it comes to family, there's things you want to do and want to participate in, and you see like, oh, they over there kicking it, doing, because the people who ain't doing work always find time to have fun, right? And you like, this is amazing. And I'm over here working hard on all the issues I got. And they
Yeah.
over there just living it up. And that it looks, because perception is reality. So you perceive that that is great, but they hurt. They over there kicking it in hurt and pain, and you over
Wow.
here trying to figure out how you don't continue to leave pain as a legacy. So the breakthrough really came with me honoring myself and being okay with that, regardless of what anybody else thought and how that was perceived. And that it still has its difficulties, but I'm okay with it now.
Yeah, you became comfortable with being okay with it. And I know your book is available, Soft Landing: A Return to Self. How can people get the book, Cha?
Right now, they can get it on Amazon. It's on Kindle and in the soft cover.
Okay, awesome. And then for other services, it's just what, shawjones.com?
Yes. So
Okay.
all my links are on chaijones.com. And then I'll be rebooting my YouTube in a couple weeks. And then I also write on Substack every week, pins to passports. And pins to
Yeah.
passports, pins and passports. So if you want to catch my stories and my newsletter, it's out there.
All right. Well, everybody, you have heard it right here on Heart to Heart. This is the lovely Cha Jones. Get the book on Amazon, Soft Landing: A Return to Self, and then check out her YouTube. She's rebooting that. And in addition, visit the website for any services, consultations, chajones.com. Until next time, everybody. See you
Thank
later.
you.